Hey, folks. Well, it's official. Matthews, stuck, 69. Nylander, stuck, 98. Leafs, stuck, third place. Next stop, Boston. Uh-oh. And we're going to break it all down for you right here, folks, on the OZone.
You're in the offensive zone, your place for Leafs hockey.
Hey, folks, welcome to the OZone. That's Coach. We love you, KD. I'm the Devo, and we're here to talk all things Leafs. I'm coming to you from the HQ of the OZ here in downtown Toronto. Coach, where are you at?
Well, I'm in the international headquarters in London. This is a big one, playoff preview. I figured I'd wear the mitts too.
Jeez, I thought you were Curtis from Alberta for a second.
Game worn Riley. Yeah, I know. I feel like I got a starter set of Curtis. What Curtis doesn't tell you, you get these game worn gloves. Morgan Riley, I can confirm he is not immune to what normally happens on the inside of hockey gloves. It's awful in here.
Yeah. All right. Listen, Coach. Well, before we get into it, folks, listen, hit subscribe, ring the bell, like, share the video, leave a comment. This is it. We're in the magical time of the year where everything matters, and we're, as Leafs fans, scared to death. So, Coach, on that note, Leafs, geez, they're limping into the postseason. 4 straight losses, season high. Coach, what happened? What went right, if anything, and clearly wrong over this last, let's call it 10 days for this team? What happened?
Yeah, Matthews gave us something to cheer about, didn't he? But especially getting those, getting a 69 with 2 left. And the injury situation really made it where he had to play. They were so banged up. I mean, they would have played short otherwise. So that was interesting. But look, if you're a Leaf fan, you cannot be fired up for a couple reasons. One, hey, whether or not we were focused on him getting 70, that doesn't address the fact that we just gave up 6, 5, 5, and 6 in the last 4 games. 5.5 a game. That's not playoff hockey.
No.
And I think the other thing that really wasn't great for me was we've talked a long time and really all year about this being late in the year. They've got great depth, especially after the trade deadline. Who's going to make a case for a bottom 6 forward spot or a case in the bottom couple of pairs on the D? This was the time, right? These 4 games. Can you think of anyone that stood out? I can't think of anyone that stood out.
Not on the defensive side.
Yeah, Noah
not on
Gregor,
the defensive side.
He scored.
Yeah,
but
Gregor.
You want someone to go and be like, okay, we can't not play that guy. And, I think the closest thing to it was probably Simon Benoit until that last game. He was awful. Anyway, so, it's disappointing. Disappointing end of the year.
Yeah, we'll get into some of the individual play, and we'll take a look at pegging the roster as best we can. But before we get there, I want to just hit on one of the things you did there, Coach. Maybe some Leafs fans being a little disappointed. The Matthews show went into high gear, with that split in New Jersey. He started scoring. Things got pretty exciting there. Got to 69. It seemed like, with, really 8 periods to go, you kind of figured this guy's going to do it. Not to mention flying under the radar here, we also had a 100-point season for Nylander, and he parked on that for about 8 games too, right? So a bit disappointing, certainly for Leafs fans. I have to be honest. I think it was a huge distraction for this team. I think it was one of the reasons why they lost 4 straight games, quite frankly. In the offensive zone, everyone was not looking at the net. They were looking at, for Austin Matthews, a lot of extra passes especially down in those dirty areas when guys just need to start pushing the pucks towards the net, especially with against some backup goaltenders that they faced. What do you think about this, Coach? Is it does it really matter?
Well, I do agree that they were overly focused on Matthews getting 70 as it pertains to the offensive zone and the power play, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everyone was looking for him. Now, Domi looks for him anyway all the time,
Yep.
but when he was, I know he's banged up, but yeah, so that is true. But I'm not sure I buy into that whole argument, and here's why.
Okay.
So him chasing 70, did that affect the goaltending? Because the goaltending
No.
was not good, right?
Yep.
Did it affect the way the Leafs defended in their zone? Also
No.
not good. How many times are we going to have to see some guy hit with a stretch pass and split the D and get in all alone? I mean,
Yeah.
surely that's not because of guys chasing 70. So, yeah, I if they were losing games 2-1, 3-2, then I think you could point to this and an over reliance on trying to get him the puck as a reason they lost games. I'm not sure that's the case here, but
Hmm.
but the power play is something now that I hope a solid coach would reset here, right? And now, okay, we don't have to find this guy over here because he's shooting at 70. Now
Mm-hmm.
let's get to work. And whatever a good shot is, we take that good shot. I hope that happens. I hope it's no longer a distraction. I will tell you
Mm-hmm.
this though, you can see that guy. It bothered Matthews not to get 70. He's going to come out hard in this
Well,
series.
that would be a great plus
Yeah.
for sure. And I don't know what anyone, it's funny. It's an arbitrary number. The difference between 69 and 70 is one. Obviously, it's a threshold to get into another sort of decade of numbers. But it's not like 69 was the record and he had to be, he's got the two Leaf records.
Yeah. I mean,
No one has scored 69 in, more than 20 years.
yeah.
It's still pretty remarkable. I would rather, see, maybe this is another thing. There's been a lot of Hart conversation going around. A few weeks ago, we thought, he's certainly in the conversation. I think when you saw Tampa the other night and you saw Kucherov do what he did,
Yeah.
I kind of think that was the final nail in the coffin. Kucherov is certainly probably ahead of Matthews in that conversation, and perhaps rightfully so. But I can tell you what award I would rather have Matthews win any day, and that's the Conn Smythe.
Conn Smythe, yes.
Because I think if that guy ever wins the Conn Smythe, it comes with two trophies.
Yeah.
And the one that everyone wants to carry at the end of the year.
Yeah, 100%. I think in that race, like Matthews should be a finalist. If anything, Kucherov getting to 100 assists after everybody made such a huge deal, momentous, that McDavid got there. Well, maybe it's not so special when two guys get there in the same year, right? So
Yeah.
maybe that affects McDavid a little bit. I don't know. You called it last time. I think it's McKinnon, but 70 might have been a round number to get him a couple more votes. But Matthews is in the conversation. I don't think he wins it.
Yeah,
Hey,
I think he's in the conversation. I think
69 is a nice number.
Yeah, I guess what fans should be taking away from this is that there are four guys doing things that are unbelievable all in this 1 year. And it's pretty good. This has been a remarkable year in hockey. Like the playoffs weren't even decided until it's still not decided in the West completely, right? So it's an amazing thing. The parity in the league, lots of fights, lots of hits, tons of points, tons of scoring, great individual efforts. It's been a pretty magical year for us Leafs fans. I'm sure we want a little bit more though. All right, let's go into the matchup. We know it's Boston. That comes along with a little bit of baggage, obviously, for Leafs fans. I mean, should it? The last time they played Boston was a long time in the postseason. But let's just look at this season against Boston. 0-4. Leafs didn't win a game. They were outscored 15-7. The Leafs managed 2 points in those with an OT loss and a shootout loss. Is this the best matchup, Coach? You tell me.
A little bit of baggage against Boston. That's like saying the Leafs have a little bit of concern in goal. Um, tons. I mean, in the what is it? 3 times I think they played in the Matthews era, and then once before that train wreck of that it was 4-1.
Yeah.
Geez.
Yeah.
Well, look. With all that baggage, all that being said, Boston is inarguably a better matchup for the Leafs than Florida. Florida plays playoff hockey. We've talked about it all year. We just talked about the Leafs losing 4 to go in here. Boston choked that division race. They
Yep.
lost to lowly Ottawa to allow this to happen.
Yep.
Now, would they say that the Leafs are a better matchup than Tampa, the way Tampa's playing? Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
But I look, if you're the Leafs, I would prefer Boston. And the matchup at a high level is simply, to me, it's this. Up front, the Leafs are way, way better. Like the retirement of Patrice Bergeron made that even more imbalanced. David Pastrnak can play on any team. Marchand is good. But you look at that 1 through 12, and the Leafs, they're dominant up front. It's going to be a handful for Boston's D. Fortunately for Boston, Boston's defense is better. Like every other matchup is better for Boston. They have better defense, better goaltending, and, in my opinion, especially better coaching. And if you don't believe me, check out this little stat. So here's the Leafs record this year, home and away. They have 6 more points on the road than they do at home. Okay, 2 more wins. They have a better points percentage. They've scored almost as many goals, and they've given up about 20 less. So do you know what happens on the road that doesn't happen at home? On the road, you have no say in the line matchups. You just roll your guys out there. At home, you should have a better record because you get the matchups. How are the Leafs worse at home? Oh, you think that's an anomaly? No, it's the same last year. It was the same in last year's playoffs. It was the same the year before. So, when it comes to the finer points of the matchups, Jim Montgomery's a pretty good coach.
Yeah, and there's one thing I will say to that. You mentioned that Boston on the back end is a better team than the Leafs. Their front end is a better defensive team than the Leafs. I think they play a team defensive style, which really helps. And so does Florida, quite frankly. So, and then throw into that the best goalie tandem in the league. And I don't think that's questionable. They've been that way for 2 years straight.
Fantastic. Devo, who else was a better defensive team as a team, including the forwards, was last year's Leaf team. So the hypothesis here was that Leafs didn't score enough in the playoffs last year. That is true. So we sacrificed team defense to get more offensive up front. Well, here's where we find out if that bet pays off. Because Boston's tough to score against. We're going to have to score some goals.
Got to score somehow. So, okay, we just ripped on the D. So let's get after it. If we look at this matchup, obviously no crystal ball. I think there's a lot of depth. We've talked about this before on the back end. A lot of guys. Keefe has felt comfortable, whether the results have been there or not, spinning these guys around. I personally don't think that's going to change. I think it's going to go game to game. You get a win, he's probably going to keep the lineup intact if everyone's happy. If you don't, he's going to mix and match some guys. But, Coach, for game 1 on the back end for D, what do you see? What do you think the lineup's going to be?
So here, I'll put it up here. Our crack graphics guys put this up. I think this is the way it shakes out. I'm not sure I agree with it, but I think Brody's on the outside looking in. So I think it's Riley and Lyubushkin, Benoit and McCabe, Edmondson and Liljegren. So I think Lyubushkin has really struggled in this stretch.
In my opinion, like I don't recall a strong game with the Leafs.
Yeah,
since
he
the
has
deadline.
just been okay. And look, um, the way he handles the puck, guys like Simon Benoit, Nikita Zaitsev, Roman Polak look at him and say, "Wow, that guy is bad with the puck." Like, it's been awful.
Yeah.
So I do think because of that bad stretch, like that's why I've kind of got Brody there. Now I know Leaf Nation's not going to want Brody to match up with Riley. They haven't been good this year,
Yeah.
but that might be a candidate. Labushkin might be a candidate not to start. I think as the series goes on, I think Brody ends up in that spot where Liljegren is. It's unfortunate, but this will be the third year in a row now. Liljegren starts or gets time, and we hope that he's going to be that puck mover. And it just doesn't happen. I hope I'm wrong, but anyway, those are clearly the 7 guys, right? Timmins and
Yeah.
Gio are 8 and 9, and they're break glass in case of emergency.
Yeah, I don't disagree with this assessment at all, Coach. I think Liljegren's. Let me put it to you this way: I think if the Leafs had won the other night, and I think if Boston had won and taken care of business, and the
Yeah.
Leafs were playing Florida, I don't think Liljegren makes the lineup. I don't think he could handle the forecheck. I agree with you. I think he starts on that third spot. And if Boston brings it, I think his times he's the first change in my estimation, unless someone does something egregious, as you would say. The Labushkin 2.0, I I don't love it. Like, I think everyone who, when they say the word Labushkin, still thinks of the Labushkin from 2-3 years ago, and what a great surprise he ended up being. I haven't seen it since the trade deadline. Like, he hasn't been solid, and gosh, here we are again. We got Riley out there just like, it's hard to soar with the Eagles when you're running with the turkeys, as they say, and that guy just can't find a partner. Brody has been the historical best partner he's ever had. Brody's having probably the worst year he's had in years.
Yeah.
Hard to say come out and find it in a playoff matchup with Boston, but I don't know. Labushkin just doesn't do it for me. I hate to say it.
I hate to say it. We talked at the trade deadline. We wanted quality over quantity. We have quantity, and all 7 of these guys are NHL defensemen. Gio is too, and
Yep.
Connor Timmins probably is too. There's 9 NHL defensemen. The problem is almost all of them are third pair guys.
Yeah.
So it's tough. It is tough. Now, thank goodness we're not playing a high powered team, right? Like, but Boston's more of a grind it out, and it'll be interesting to see who plays against Pasternak, because he's a legit threat. He's an awesome player.
It's going to be the McCabe line.
Yeah, I hope so, because McCabe has been really good, and he has to have a much better playoff than he did last year. He was not great, but he's been great all year.
Coach, we didn't bring it up at the beginning, and I probably should have. One minor, tiny blip of a bright spot over the last 3 games, the PK.
Yeah.
What wasn't when you consider the amount of goals they gave up, and when you consider how many power plays they gave their opponents, it wasn't too bad. They fared okay, right? So is that? Let's remember, folks, that's Brody logging a lot of minutes because he gets thrown in there. Edmondson, when he's played, has been there. Benoit has been out there. Riley logged a few minutes there, which I wish wasn't happening, but it looked okay. That's
and we say it every year. Like, we get on here after the Leafs burn out in the playoffs. Fortunately, it was a week or so later last year than it had been all the rest of those years. And it's special teams, right? And again, Boston's got great special teams, and they're not as good 5-on-5. Tampa, not nearly as good 5-on-5 as the Leafs, but they have great special teams. So I sure hope the PK keeps rolling. I think another factor there is Mitch Marner coming back. But
Yep.
yeah, it's funny about Brody though, isn't it? We're talking about Brody being maybe a 6'7" guy here because he struggled. You know
Mhm.
what though? Other than Riley, he plays the most minutes when he's in,
Hardest
even though he
minutes,
struggled.
and not just the most minutes. When Riley was out, he played the most minutes
Yeah,
by
yeah,
far. But he plays the hardest matchups of all of their D,
yeah.
all
He
of them,
plays
the
tough minutes.
hardest matchups. And when you look at the defensive side of the Leafs bench, and you've heard me say this now, they've got Edmondson on there and Benoit. But generally speaking, the bench slants the wrong way towards the defense. They're smaller on the back end. This team. Um, Brody's not a big guy. He's not the kind of guy that's supposed to be logging those shutdown minutes. And he's for the majority of this year, he's been their shutdown guy. It's just not. It's not a useful or appropriate role. But I suppose the argument is, well, who else are you going to put back there?
Yeah,
So
yeah. That's be a lot of fingers crossed in this
yeah.
series.
All right, Coach. We've done the D.
Yeah.
Let's move on. Let's move on to the forwards. Things have gotten a little bit more interesting. With Marner coming back. I I feel like since Marner's been back, the team has got legit softer. They don't have the snarl that they had, but a few guys also haven't been in the lineup all that much as well. Um, but there were some bright moments the other night on the power play. Him wheeling and dealing at the
Yeah.
at the blue line and that shot, which I think Tavares ended up getting the goal, but um, there's no one else on the Leafs team that can do that. Him on his ankles doing those things is pretty remarkable. The puck on his stick, pretty amazing stuff. And obviously, I think the PK is better with him there. So he changes things. Yarncroke, not in yet, hasn't played a game back yet. I'll give it to you, Coach. You got the floor. What do you think? How the lineups look?
Yeah, I think I am thinking Yarncrock's going to play in game one. He is skating; he's practiced a bit, but so you don't touch the first line, right? Especially, I'm assuming Domi can go. Bertuzzi, Matthews, and Domi, absolutely.
Hmm.
Bobby McMahon is banged up too, and I'm not sure the extent of that. So I've got him or Yarncroc beside Tavares and Marner on the second line. Might be Nick Robertson if neither of those guys could go, right?
Yes.
And then we got
Yep.
Nyes, Holmberg, and Nylander. I think Nylander plays with anybody there. And then, if McMahon is back, Yarncroc needs a spot if he's back. And I think Connor Dewar is the guy, at least to start. I think for game one, Reeves is going to play just in case there's some tone setting to be done. And that's
Mm-hmm.
so if Yarncroc is back, if one of Yarncroc or McMahon is back, I think that leaves Robertson on the outside looking in until such time as we're having trouble scoring, and then he's got to come back in. And Noah Gregor, it's okay. I think this is the way they roll, and I think you could see in that bottom, that fourth line, really any of those guys could slot in, slot out. If Robertson, other than Robertson, if he slots in, it should be higher because we need that guy to score. And as iffy as he is defensively, he can score.
Yes. Yeah, I think if goals is the question, then I think he's definitely plays into the lineup. The Yarncroc question is an interesting one to me. I mean, when was the last time he played? He's been out a long time.
Yeah, I came back for like 2 or 3 games and then got hurt again. Because what did he break his hand or something? And
He
then
broke his
yeah,
hand, so it's that he has been skating for a long time. But they always say like you skate, you do your sprints, you get on the
yeah,
bike, you do all that stuff. I mean, you stay in shape, but it's not the same. I mean, because he's in the lineup for one reason. He's a penalty killer,
yeah.
right? He's a jackknife, right? That you can bring him in defensive situations. So you gotta be a bit game ready, right?
Yeah, I agree. He's going to have some rust, but he is he's in the top half, I think, of Leaf forward. So maybe you take a chance, and even if he's rusty, is he not better than Connor Dewar, for example, on that fourth line, right?
Sure.
So but you're right. It would have been great to get him in, like Liljegren did, come back and get in for a couple games,
especially in these last couple games that were meaningless.
Yeah,
that's tough. All right, I'll ask the question that doesn't need to be asked. I'm assuming we're both in agreement on the back end. Samsonov is your game one starter with Wall backing him up. We're not going to make too much about this Matt Murray noise online.
It's an extended April Fool's joke. Come on. So look, Samsonov, he kind of won the race with 6 or 7 games left. And then both of those guys struggled. I really wish Joe Wall had put up some more of a fight.
I'm with you too.
I actually personally think that Joe Wall's going to end up finishing this series. And in that respect, I hope he gets in early enough to make an impact. But I hope that's not the case. I hope Samsonov will start. And I hope he gets rolling because we need a save. I mean, the margins between these two teams are so skinny. Need a save.
Yeah.
And you're going to get one at the other end.
Yeah. Coach, when we go back and look at this matchup with Boston, and you go back through the annals of the playoff eras several years ago where the Leafs either, 18-wheeler off a cliff or however you want to match it up with the losses there. The thing was always the same. Generally speaking, you had your stars couldn't score, right? No secondary scoring. You had no great shutdown D pair. You weren't tough, no team toughness, and no goalie star. So if you look at those 5 things,
how did they ever get to Game 7 in those series?
So if you look at those 5 things, their stars have to score, right? They still don't have a defensive matchup. Like they don't. In fact, this is worse than what it was years ago. So worse defensively. Goalie situation, certainly the way they're playing moving into the playoffs, way worse. I mean, especially with the matchup against Boston. Tougher. I think we could say maybe tougher. I hope we can say that. We should be able to say that at this point. So D and goalie is still the problem. That's still the nagging problem. Assuming the Stars can show up, I think their secondary scoring is better than it's been. So really the difference here, if we know all the parts, and we know Samsonov's probably not going to outperform the goalies over in Boston. We know that Brody's not going to get in a time machine and come out, 3 years younger. That we need Matthews, Marner, Nylander, Tavares to go off, and that's it, right?
Somebody's got to score. I mean, I might add special teams to your list, but it's a pretty comprehensive list. And I think Samsonov's got to do what he did last year against Tampa. Just keep us in it. Like he was a little bit better than Vasilevsky. Vasilevsky wasn't very good, but he just needs to be the same or close to these guys at the other end. He does.
Yeah.
Like somebody's got to score. And, let's hope the experiment with having Nylander on that third line, he should look, as good as Boston, Charlie McAvoy is great. Hampus Lindholm is really good. Their third pair is shaky, like Leaf shaky. So can Nylander feast on that? Yeah. Something has got to give because we need more goals.
Yeah. And every mistake that Toronto makes can end up in the back of the net.
Yeah.
And that's been a problem. That's been a problem. Like if we're going all the way back to Reimer at this point, and remember, like every mistake, the Leafs leaned on him, outshot him, but every mistake went the wrong way. So
he was in that series in 2013, wasn't he?
Sorry to bring it up. Yeah. So okay, Coach, I'm going to do it. What are the Leafs' chances? What's going to happen in the series? Give me the series. What is it?
Yeah, everywhere you look, it should be. They're saying the closest series should be competitive. I think the Athletic had it Boston at like a 53% chance of winning. It's basically a
Yep.
toss up. So what's going to happen in the series? Will the coach family be well represented? I
Yes.
was just in talks to go to Game 1 in Boston. I think I'm going to fly over from London and go to that Game 1.
Unbelievable. Stay
So
safe.
So I think then, what I can predict is I'm going to get my ass kicked, and in Boston, and then for the rest of them, I can predict I'm going to be really tired after games. So 7 Eastern is midnight here in London. So I'll
Oh
be staying
gosh,
up
it's
for
going to
those.
be that's
Yeah.
a tough week for you.
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention. I think Mrs. Coach is going to go to Toronto for games 3 and 4 with our kids. So they got to work
Yeah.
out that. So yeah,
The
we'll
coach,
be there.
the coach
We're-
family, very well represented.
Yeah, we get in early in the series because the Leafs get, if Samsonov's not good, it's not a long one. But yeah, 2 evenly matched teams. It's going to come down to, I believe, can we get a save when it matters? And there's no indication that would happen, which maybe means that it will happen. Like there's not nearly the hype here. I don't know. I don't feel like I did the last years where I see this a really long run, and I'm prepared to be really angry if there isn't a long run. I'm kind of zen here, and maybe the last 4 games have lowered my expectations. Plus, you got the Boston thing, and we never beat those guys. I don't know. Like I am actually, in my mindset is I don't think we're winning this series, which maybe is what we need to get over the hump against Boston.
That's true. I equate this in a lot of ways to the 92-93, right? We were up against Detroit in the first round. I think we were down 3-1 in that series, to be honest. And everyone was surprised the Leafs even had a game. And then the Leafs stormed back. And we remember it was a Wayne Gretzky high stick away from playing Montreal in the final that year.
Yeah. What a huge win. Little Nikolai Borshevsky gets that goal against Detroit. Can Keefe channel a little Pat Burns here this time?
Please.
Oh,
please.
that would be great.
Matchup. The Leafs are going to need to... what Burns loved to do when he matched up, went long on the face-offs. If you look at the last 5 games, the Leafs were outdrawn. The Leafs have outdrawn their opponents every night. They were distracted. I'm sticking to that mantra. They were distracted by this thing. Even Matthews was not winning faceoffs, overthinking it, getting themselves into trouble. All right, folks. Well, listen. The gauntlet begins. We are going to be here for you most of the time. I'm going to Spain, so we might not be totally well, but you can hear from us, and we're going to be here right here on the Ozone.